Black Magic Woman podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this episode on. We also acknowledge traditional owners of the land where you, the listener or viewer, are tuning in from. We would like to pay our respects to our elders past and present and acknowledge that this always was Aboriginal land and always will be Aboriginal land.
Welcome to the Black Magic Woman podcast with Mundanara Bales.
Welcome back to another episode of Black Magic Woman podcast. I am here on the beautiful lands of the Gadigal peoples in Sydney. For those that don't know this beautiful place, I know that people are now joining us from all around the world and also our viewers on YouTube. It is nice to have your company. It's an absolute privilege to be able to talk to deadly black fellas, and it's a term that we use, and I am actually wearing this little jumper, and yes, it's in the kind of Barbie logo and the movie's out. Black fellas is a term that we use as Aboriginal people, and it's got nothing to do with skin colour. Obviously, it's how we live our life that determines or defines us as black fellas. So when you see people wearing tops like this, it's unique to Aboriginal people in Australia. So it's not all Indigenous people using these terms. It's unique to Aboriginal people in this country, now known as Australia. So as you know, for those that have been following and listening, especially on Virgin, which is amazing, and also now on the iHeart network, it's an opportunity for me to have a yarn, and I like to just let the conversation go in the direction of wherever it's going to go without interviewing. So I always say that this podcast, the format is conversational. There may be opportunities where I may ask questions, but it literally is a yarn. We are literally sitting on the couch. I'm here with my brother, Leong. Finally, after all these years of working with you, and you're still at Commonwealth Bank, but all these years working with you, I have never really thought of, I never thought I was going to do a podcast. And look where we are. But my company, Black Card, engaged with Commonwealth Bank, and that's how we first met. But let's hold that thought and go back to my brother. Can you share with my listeners and also now our viewers on YouTube, who's your mob? Where did you grow up? And just tell us a little bit about yourself.
No, definitely. Thanks, Mara. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we're gathering and pay my respects to elders past and present. So my name's Kyle. I am a Koko-bera man from the small Aboriginal community known as Kowanyama from the Gulf of Carpentaria, west of the peninsula of the Gulf of Carpentaria. But I was Queensland, Cape York, yeah. Area. And but I grew up and was born on Turrabal in Jaggera land in Brisbane, but also got to spend my schooling years on Kookagallinji land up in far north Queensland in Cairns. So for me, even though I haven't lived there in over nearly 20 years now, Cairns is still a place of home for me, just because it feels like that's where I'm from and what I've been able to connect with is most. But as we always do, got to do it in Aboriginal terms of reference that Black Card taught us. I am fortunate enough that I have 3 beautiful children, 2 girls, 1 boy, and my wife, Laura, who's also a Kamilaroi woman. So mob connecting more ways. And they, as we were saying just then, not skin colour or anything like that, but they look blacker and got darker features.
They're black fellas?
Yeah, than me. So it's really funny. It's a bit of a throwback to the Rellos.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up in Brizzy, but now I actually live in Toowoomba on Gadigal and Jarowair land. If I get
Jarowair. It's hard to pronounce some of these.
I struggle.
Like not tribes, because it's language groups, and we're not all experts.
No.
Of Aboriginal language and culture and history. There's a lot of us, right? Like over 250 different countries that are all autonomous, they're all bosses for themselves. So that, people need to understand that we're not all one people or one mob. and we do use that term, one mob.
100%.
But we're different peoples from different countries.
And I think as well, the big thing as well, like, is even though we may not get it right all the time, we still got to practice what we preach. If we want white fellas to go ahead and use the names and use the languages, we got to step out and be uncomfortable. And make sure
we got to talk the talk and walk the walk.
Yeah.
Because we're asking people to do the same thing.
100%. So other than that, though, you may be able to tell that I'm also of Chinese descent. So third generation Chinese Australian. Unfortunately, don't speak any Mandarin. So I really dropped the ball there.
Mandarin with
dropped the ball there, which would have been good for professional and personal.
It is never too late, and you are never too old to go back to school or to learn a new skill. I might be able to teach you some. I still can count in Mandarin.
Yeah, I only know Si, which is close to 4 because it's close to death, and that's the only thing.
Yi, ya, san, shi, wu. There you go. I can count to 5. Leo Bar is 6, 7. So,
better Chinese person than I am.
Well, I absolutely thrive when learning other cultures. I thrive. So you're now, I guess, you're living in Toowoomba.
Mm-hmm.
You're in Sydney back in the day. When I first met you,
yes,
you were living down here.
Yes.
Was you an intern from the Career Trackers program?
I was, yeah. I was an intern at a different company.
Yeah.
Came across to the Commonwealth Bank as a grad, apparently their first one, from a blackfella heritage.
Yes.
In 2015.
Yeah.
And I started in the accounting program because I did interning in the accounting area. And 3 weeks in, I was just like, I'm not going to be an accountant. I respect everybody that can do it. I'm just not built that way. I've got to be meeting people, talking, all that sort of stuff. And so 10 months in, I jumped at the opportunity to work with the Indigenous Careers team, and I took over the intern and graduate program as well as our experienced hires, and started to look after the program that sort of brought me along. And I was able to utilize my understanding of what it's like to be an intern, what it's like to apply for the grad program as somebody who had to do it differently to the organisation that I was at, and then also help support them as they're going through. And I was quite blessed that I got to actually do it with a lot of people and a lot of friends and peers, which then shifted into bringing more mob into the bank, which made it more like a gang of one mob as well.
A community of mob.
And we ended up having a huge amount of my friends and people I consider family working together, and we actually got to do some really cool things.
I love the fact that you're saying a lot of my family, a lot of my friends, we are a community, right? We all know each other, we're all connected. And if you're not part of the mob, trust me, you become part of the mob pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
People like, Brother Noel Prakash, there's other like non-Aboriginal people in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander space that invest in relationships and take time to go and build relationships, go out on country, go to community events, meet elders, and also build cultural capability. I know that when we met, that Black Card, which is a company that I founded with my elders, we were building a framework for CBA to support the organisation's first ever Elevate Reconciliation Action Plan. And that was like 8 years ago.
It's so weird that it was that long ago.
That long, because you were literally, I'm telling you now, you were a baby.
No grey hairs.
My aunt Lilla said, this fella, he looks like he's 17. Like you were young. Yeah. And you were like so, I remember Aunt Lilla, like, because there wasn't many black fellas back then, 8 years ago. There wasn't many of yous. And Aunt Lilla said, this young fella is real confident. And this kind of, two-way strong, or being able to walk in two worlds. I've been watching you over the years, and the fact that you're able to pass that on to the new hirees, the new people coming in, the young mob at universities, to start getting them to think about what does an internship look like within a bank like CBA. So tell me, what's been some of the, highlights of your time at CBA? What's been career highlights, personal highlights, professional highlights? Fill me in.
So let's start with personal.
Yes.
I met my wife as a ex-intern.
Yeah.
So she interned at the Commonwealth Bank. At the end of her internship, she was very much going to be a lawyer, and she wanted to work with refugees in terms of supporting them getting through the country. So she was like, Kyle, I really appreciate everything you've done, but we're done and dusted here. I'm going to try and find a role that suits what I want to do. Fast forward 6 months, she had an unfortunate passing of her grandmother, and I just reached out to say, sorry to hear about your loss, and that actually kicked things off. So personal-wise, there's that one, and it's amazing. Now we have 3 beautiful kids, and it's crazy to think of. And we got married in April.
And every time I spoke to you, there's another baby.
Another baby. We're done. I gotta go get the snip.
He says it. He says it now.
No, I'm not the one that makes that decision.
How many 3 under what age?
So we got 13, about to be 5, and 18 months.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I knew there was a big gap.
Yeah.
And then you went again, I'm like, this fella. Yeah. And you've been doing like co-parenting, like you've been doing some of because my husband, P, stays at home and has been the biggest support. Like there's no way in the world I could build Black Card and then run a podcast and study at Monash. I couldn't do all that without somebody holding down, the house and the cooking and the cleaning and the driving and making lunches. Like, I can't do all that. And when I was talking to you and you're like, no, I'm raising kids.
Yeah, it's a different world, but I bless the fact that I grew up in such a loving home. Both, funny enough, I come from a co-parenting family myself, so it's very simple to understand the ins and outs of everything that goes with it, and I guess the nuances in that. But I love it. I love school pickup, drop-offs, breakfasts. I cook majority of the dinners. My wife will agree to that, so I'm not in trouble for saying that. But I enjoy that sort of stuff. And funny enough, in terms of role reversal, she loves the gardening. So she does it mainly because I got a bad back, but she actually loves the gardening. So she's out there doing
the hearts of getting her hands dirty. As we these hands don't get dirty.
They look manicured, but so that's we're lucky in the sense of that's the personal side of things. That's probably my favorite stuff outside of the mob and the network we have there, but I can't go past that.
Of course.
If I did, I'd
now you kind of but now that you've got your kids, right?
Everything sort of shifts.
It shifts.
Your work is still a priority, but it's not the be all and end all.
It's not.
But I'm pretty lucky, like with what I've been able to do. So we've had the incredible success that we're able to build from the intern and graduate portfolio. I've actually shifted to now looking after personal banking. So anything you can do over the counter or over the phone. So as an individual, so account setup, credit cards, personal loans, home loans, anything along those, as well as all the stuff we look after internally, mob, procurement, Black Card training for our staff, that sort of stuff.
The area you're in now.
That's what I'm doing now. So if I'm looking at it at the moment, one of the things that I am most proud of, and funny enough, we kicked off the pilot today as our second one.
Congratulations.
Is financial literacy training by mob for mob. So we are partnering with First Nations Foundation and Deadly Brother Phil Usher. Got to give a shout out to him.
And Lucretia Jerome with Rich Black Women, the podcast.
Amazing.
Yes.
Love it.
So Phil Usher over there. Yep.
And so what we're doing is we're piloting in 15 branches to as well as being online to provide financial literacy if mob want it. So it ranges from understanding our cultural heritage and the nuances of money, because it's not something that comes naturally to us because it wasn't a monetary value when we were back in the day. And then obviously things like how do you handle humbugging and that sort of stuff from mob. But then as it grows out of the cultural side, we start to look at the Western ways of working as well, in terms of how do you make sure that you're saving right, making sure that when your money comes in, your debits go out, so that you're not constantly having dishonorment fees and those sort of things, building all the way up until you're like, hey, trying to save for a home, and like you get past that point, you get safe, you get secure, then building more wealth, and getting to the point where we as a mob haven't had the luxury of intergenerational wealth and having that passed down to us, how then we can actually support our young families and those sort of things. So
it is needed, right? It's there's a lot of evidence in terms of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people being locked out of the economies, in Australia. So participation, education, it leads to opportunities, employment, and then you start making money, but then that money, you're burning it. So a lot of our mob, and I'm one, I'm the first to say that I had no idea about, savings and credit cards and getting a loan and what the interest is. I remember getting a car and I had no idea that I was going to pay an extra $38,000 in interest. I had no idea. It was my grandmother, Auntie Lilla's brother, that told me. Auntie Lilla's husband, Uncle Richard, that told me, let me loan you the money and pay that car off now because you're paying an extra $38,000. I'm like, what? So he helped me. Then I paid him back.
Yeah.
So money definitely, financial literacy is super important for our mob, especially when we're tackling poverty
100%.
and trying to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty and start creating intergenerational wealth.
Yeah.
So CBA do a lot of things. Like that's one of the programs. I know that you fellas are really big on upskilling your people around cultural capability, and it's through CBA. A lot of people have come to Black Card and literally said, well, I know someone at CBA. You even told Derek Hart from Google.
Yeah.
You literally said to Google, you should talk to Mandanara. And now Black Card have been rolling out training for Google. So CommBank have been our biggest advocates, biggest supporters, have believed in us from day one. We did take out the Supply Nation Supplier Diversity Partnership of the Year Award in 2020, CommBank and Black Card. So this is where I talk about how do corporates and Indigenous businesses, how do we back each other? How do we support each other? It's not always monetary.
No.
Right? There's people in the business like you've got Sharona Torrance, you've got Lucy, there's yourself, there was Maddie Ricks, there was Noel Prakash. People in the business that always, Mark Skelton, there was so many people I've met that I feel like I need to thank and acknowledge, and you all know who you are, but have reached out to me, linked up with me on LinkedIn, stayed in touch with me, and kept the relationship strong. But I always know that I can ring someone like you and have a yarn. I always know that I can ring Sharona and talk about, what do you think about this? So you've got a deadly team now. I can see young people coming through. There's Tamara, there's Simone, there's Kath McGuire. Like, I feel like I need to literally remember all of your names, but it's an organisation that I really do support. And I'm not just saying it because you're a client of mine. There's over 4,000 CBA employees that are Black Card trained.
Yep.
The CEO, Matt Common, and the board, every single board member at CBA have done Black Card training with me. Like, yous are really, when you think about walking the walk and talking the talk, I see that happening. But it's the top-down approach.
Yeah.
So for organisations that and corporates and people that are listening to this podcast, if they're thinking about, how do we increase our Indigenous employment numbers? How do we go out and engage with Indigenous communities? What would be some kind of tips that you would share with people that have no idea and are yet to take the first step?
My biggest, recommendation of this is just making sure that you're engaging with mob before you go and do anything. Too often you have people that sort of run before they can walk and get so excited or have done something that just inspires them and they want to go ahead and do things, and then they might just have a little bit of a slip, might do something that can be seen as too over enthusiastic and have a little bit of negativity behind it.
Yeah. Or don't do anything for us without us.
100%.
A lot of mobs say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, walk with us.
And I think that's the big thing. So if you have people in the organisation already, I would go, what are we doing well? What are we doing wrong? What can we improve on? And then go as well, set up some sort of advisory council or an internal mechanism. So for CBA, we actually have both. We have the advisory council that we have from mob that are external, some deadly aunties and uncles.
The Indigenous Advisory Group.
Yep.
IAG.
IAC, the Indigenous Advisory Council.
Yes.
And then we have the Indigenous Leadership Team, which we've now formed internally, and we did off our own back. So all of us mob got together and were like, okay, we practice what we preach here. We got a Indigenous mechanism. We always get hit up to do like speaking engagements, bringing everything together, and it all tends to be, sometimes last minute, sometimes like, oh, how do we get this across the line? And we were like, we got to do something where we form together, and it also gives us power in numbers. So if something is a risk from a mob point of view, like we're not comfortable with what's going on.
Culturally, when you start thinking about the impacts.
Yeah, 100%. So we then turn around and go, you know what? As a collective, as a mob, we're not 100% behind this. Can we look at a different way of doing it? And it's been really positively received. So as it started, all the people you mentioned actually on it.
Are they?
Yeah. And we all...
Simone Canmore.
Simone
Like,
Canmore,
I'm like,
amazing.
I've got to literally, I know there's a lot of people that are, you know, doing amazing things within your business. And some of them we don't even know yet, right? Some of them are doing amazing things. There was a manager in Campsie of a branch that the business wasn't even really, it's not that they weren't aware of her, but they didn't even know that her story was like she was cleaning, went for a job, then became, you know, a teller. She ended up being the branch manager in Campsie, and 50% of the staff in that branch were Indigenous.
Yeah.
Like, you know, some people don't, you know, put their hands up and say, hey, look what I'm doing. Look how amazing I am. So it's important that we actually start sharing with people, you know, some of the black excellence or black success, or, yeah, I call it black excellence within
100%.
businesses.
Yeah.
So the First Nations, you've got your executive, your leadership kind of group.
Yeah.
You've got the Indigenous Advisory Council, which is like external with community and experts that support people in your business. And then you usually have a RAP committee, which is, again, is driving the RAP outcomes.
So you've got the RAP committee, which is just anybody who has any touch points on the Reconciliation Action Plan, as well as our white fellows and advocates that help out on that sort of stuff as well, which we know, like, we're not going to get everything done ourselves. It's just a large organisation, and we're all on, I guess, unique journeys, but usually a little bit younger journeys.
Yeah.
And so how do we support that? And then I guess the big thing for the Indigenous Leadership Team, or ILT, we've coined it, is that we're also the voice of our Indigenous staff. So anything we do...
So the Yana Bajari network?
No, this is again separate.
Again, see, like, this is really good, like, especially for banks, but also just for organisations, to see that it's not one or two people driving things. It's not just a CEO, or it's not just Indigenous Affairs.
It's a group of about 100 to 200 people. So Yana Bajari is our reconciliation network and ally group.
Yeah.
So that's both black fellows and white fellows working together.
Yeah.
Our Indigenous Employee Network is a group of all of our Indigenous staff that we know of, because they self-identify, and we get them all together. We have a Teams chat, we have a yarn, we have a yarning circle every fortnight. We all get together just to sort of touch base, but also career development, anything that can be done.
Yeah.
But we also make sure that anything that we're doing as a leadership team, because we're advocates for mob, is that the mob are comfortable with what we're doing. So we try and take it to them. Like, so for example, with the voice campaign and everything going on, we as individuals are pretty supportive, and I think I can say that everyone's supportive of that. From a Indigenous Employee Network, we know that there might be some different opinions. And we did say outline, look, we're going to have to take the majority here, because we have to make sure that we're presenting a consistent message, but we understand that not everyone agrees. But if nobody agrees, we will actually let the bank know of our position and how we should, as an organisation, go forward. Fortunately for the ILT who do support it, the network also supported it majoritively. And so we then got to actually put real voice to power and put real into, yes, we support it. So then the bank has gone 100%, we're going to be behind it as well. This
is absolutely amazing. I love yarning with you, and I could yarn with you all afternoon.
As always.
But we do need to get to
I got to get tucked up, get my bow tie on again.
We've got the big event here tonight in Sydney for Supply Nation Connect, and a few people are up for an award. Could be me. But I literally, every single time I get to yarn with you, I learn more about the bank. And I just think that, you know, the more that we talk about what we do as black fellas working in organisations like a big bank, like Commonwealth Bank, that we start to normalise for our mob, that they start to see, well, if you can do what you're doing, then I can too. So I just want to say, Leong, my deadly brother from another mother, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast to share the incredible work you've been doing at CBA. And I just can't wait to see what else you do. But yeah, like I said, I love catching up with you, and thanks so much for jumping on the podcast.
Thanks for having us. I love being here.
Too deadly. Thank you. If you'd like any more info on today's guest, please visit our show notes in the episode description. A big shout out to all you Deadly Mob and allies who continue to listen, watch and support our podcast. Your feedback means the world. You can rate and review the podcast on Apple and Spotify, or even head to our socials and YouTube channel and drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. The Black Magic Woman podcast is produced by Clint Curtis.